What's up, what's up? It's time for Done Way Past Funny with your host, G.D. Fenderson. Join us as we discuss the art, science, and business of comedy with comedians and comedian adjacent. With this episode's guest, John Beavers. It's time to get down and get dope with Done Way Past Funny. Hi, welcome to Done Way Past Funny, where we discuss the art, science, and business of comedy with comedians and comedian adjacent. I'm your host, G.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist at large, but I'm losing weight. My guest this episode is comedian and show producer John Beavers of Slaptail Nation.
What's
How's
up?
it going, John?
How's it going?
What's up? It's going great. It's going great. I thank you. First of all, thank you for doing this with me.
I'm honored to be here.
We'll see about the honor later. Very few people have their honor when they're done with me. So if you don't mind telling people a little bit about yourself and let them know how and where they can stalk you if you so want to be stalked.
Excellent. Yes, I am John Beavers, aka the Beav Man. I am a podcaster professionally, I like to say. I've been doing that for 7 years. Got the Slaptail Squad podcast, and I'm a comedy producer here in a little town called Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I'm half of Slaptail Nation, the other half being my wife. I've been doing stand-up for just shy of 2 years, so mostly just the podcast comedy.
Now, see, because of the way you answered that, one of the last questions I was going to ask you is now going to be my second. Here it is. I'm going to reword it because I originally wrote it to say, according to your blurb, yeah, I can still write it that way. Okay. In your blurb about your podcast, you say that your wife, Amethyst, am I saying it right? Amethyst?
That's correct.
Okay. Wouldn't know good comedy if it bit her on her lovely backside.
True.
So I was going to say, so how accurate is your portrayal of your wife's backside and her knowledge of comedy?
Well, her backside used to be like the perfect heart-shaped ass, but she was in an accident back in November. So it has now become more of a heart with a heart failure type ass. So it's a little bit less of a true heart-shaped ass. No fault of her own. It'll get back there. But no, she likes, you can go to, she scouts comedy with me, and she doesn't laugh at like much of anything.
Now, okay. I have a neighbor, my next door neighbor. He knows I'm a comedian. And so sometimes he'll drive by, and as he drives by, if he sees me out in my yard walking, he'll stop to talk to me. And inevitably, I'll say something that I think is funny. And he looked at me once and he goes, "Just so you know, I don't laugh on the inside." So my question is your wife laughing on the inside, or she just doesn't think it's funny?
Now, she thinks like Adam Sandler's funny. She likes very juvenile comedy. Like
Okay.
stuff like, fart noises or poop or, stuff like that. She has a very short attention span. So if it doesn't grab her right away, she's like, doesn't pay attention.
So have you put in any farts and stuff like that in your routine just for your wife so that she would laugh at your stuff, or?
No, I don't care if she laughs at my stuff or not. I'm definitely not doing it for her. No.
Okay, now let's see here. Why did I put these questions in order? I don't know. Okay, you were in the military.
Yes.
Okay, and you were also a licensed practitioner. Let's see, NLP. Is that what it is?
I am a nurse practitioner.
Nurse practitioner.
Yep.
Okay. Between those two occupations, how much have they prepared you for comedy?
Oh, quite a bit. I spent my first career was in the military. So I spent nearly 7 years as an active duty Army soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the infantry, which nobody knows anything about that. That's like the war fighters. That's the people who are the ground fighters, but we jumped out of airplanes.
Expendable. No, I'm just teasing.
We didn't like to think so.
Nobody wants to think they're expendable. But if you're the first ones in,
yeah,
because the generals will never go in. The generals like the last ones in.
Right.
They're the ones after it's all over. The generals go and say, "We won." So,
But yeah, literally all you do is joke around. I mean, you're training, you're joking around, you just fuck around all the time. And it's a really kind of fun thing to do when you're a young man because you're blowing shit up, you're hanging out with your buddies, and you just make jokes all the time, and everything is funny to you.
Right.
It's just constant fucking around. And if you're somebody who can do impressions, which I can't do anymore for some reason, but I did impressions a lot when I was in basic training, and I would impersonate the drill sergeants. And then you get caught doing that, and they're making you do it in front of the entire company or whatever. And so you do that all the time. And then transitioning out of the military, where I was trained to kill people, and then transitioning right into jobs where I was trained to save people. I thought, well, I'm going to stop swearing. I'm going to stop doing all these things. But then I went to work in the emergency room right away, and all the nurses swear just as much as infantrymen do. So I fit,
Yeah.
and it was really fun. And they're just crazy too. And it was just joking all the time because we saw such horrible shit that you have to joke about it or it's just going to break you. So
And that's what I was about to say now, because both of those situations are very stressful for two different reasons. Um, and they have two different fail points, as a matter of fact, as well. But, well, I guess, well, actually, if you're a soldier and you fail, people die. And if you're a nurse and you fail, people could die as well. So I
yeah.
guess it's the same failure point.
Hmm.
But the point is that they're both so stressful, um, that comedy is a good release for that kind of thing. I mean, it's a good defense,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like you said, it will eat you up. If
Yeah.
you have a conscience, I take that back. If you have a
Right.
conscience, it will eat you up. If you don't have a conscience, it's just another day, another body. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so now have you done comedy outside of Kalamazoo? I'm just curious about the differences in regional comedy. Even in,
Hmm.
okay, you're in Michigan, Kalamazoo, that would make you a Youper?
Oh no, I'm in the lower peninsula.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, so you're a troll.
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, for those of people who aren't familiar with trolls and Youpers, Youper is just a mispronunciation of upper because it's the upper peninsula. Michigan shapes like a mitt, a little, yeah, oven mitt. And I think it's everything above. What bridge is it? There's a bridge.
Yeah.
And
Mackinac. The
Mackinac
Mackinac
Bridge.
Bridge.
So everything
Mhm.
north of the Mackinac Bridge makes people a Youper. Everything under the bridge makes them a troll.
Right.
So I was just clarifying that for people because
Yeah.
I'm so Spartans fan or Wolverines.
I don't care about either one. I
You,
didn't go to either school. We always make fun of people here in Michigan, like because we call them like Walmart fans or whatever because they buy all their
oh
gear at
yeah,
Walmart.
yeah.
So they're either U of M or they're Michigan State, and they're always like, "Yeah, we won last night." And you're like, you didn't even play. You didn't even go to that school. So yeah, we're not. We're like we like hockey more than anything, so we don't pay much attention to the college stuff.
Okay,
And
so you went to Kellogg, right? Kellogg Community College,
so that's where I went for my registered nurse degree, so my
right?
ADN, and then I got my bachelor's degree at Siena Heights University, also in Michigan, and then I got my master's degree at Grand Valley State University, and then I got my doctorate at I can't even think of the name of my university. That's terrible.
I did write it down, but I didn't think I was going to need it. I did write.
Yeah, that's terrible. We're gonna have to black that part out. If anybody's listening that went to school with me, they're like, "You son of a bitch!" It's like the greatest nursing university there is. It's the only one of the only nursing schools still in America that's just a nursing school.
Wow. Now
Frontier.
I
God
feel
damn it.
bad. Now I should have written it down.
It's Frontier Nursing University.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that sounds right. That does sound right.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did do some of my homework. I just didn't.
yeah.
Okay.
Please forgive me, Mary Breckenridge. There, I just redeemed myself.
Now, other than drawing from the military, well, do you do much comedy about the military experience and
I
about
actually
nursing?
don't. No, I actually really don't. I did it like at a veteran show once.
Hmm.
We produced a veteran show and that was fun. But usually I don't. My comedy is it's really about just bad experiences in life in general, or what I see that I think is ridiculously bad, or so I just do a lot of gallows humor stuff, but I don't dip too much back in the military stuff because honestly, it was so long ago. I don't really remember. I don't even remember half of it anymore, and I've hit my head a bunch of times, so I don't really remember.
Okay, now you've described yourself as being a dark comic. Um, so dark compared to what? Because it's a scale, I mean,
Mhm.
I've watched your stuff and I'm going like, really? That's dark?
Mhm.
So I didn't know if you're like holding back in the clip, or if that's just not the
Mhm.
dark stuff, or what you compare yourself to is, so I'm just curious why you consider yourself a dark comic.
So the clip that I sent was like dark light. That was for a competition.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't really get very dark, unless I'm doing, like, something that, if somebody's asked me to do a show, I always warn them ahead of time because I'm like, "Yeah, I usually go really pretty dark," because I do talk about things like infanticide and matricide and homicide and all these other things, and I'll talk about like, even my abortion joke is like somebody said, "Oh, your abortion joke's not appropriate," and I was like, "My abortion joke is actually a political joke, and you're just too dumb to get it." Um, so, yeah, I do a lot of stuff like that, or I'll talk about some of the dreams I have. When I do, like, crowd work, I'll say stuff to the crowd like, "Hey, you know that dream we all have where you start to run out of rooms in your backyard room in the backyard to bury the body, so you have to start stacking them like Lego?" Yeah, so a lot of my stuff is my thoughts are extremely dark, so I just usually put them into comedy. What I don't
Okay.
do is I really don't talk about, like, sex or anything like that. I don't really talk about that.
Right. Now, I I was curious because one of the things I put in my comedy, in my EPK, is that I discuss immature. I'm sorry. I discuss mature material in an immature manner.
Okay.
And so one of the things I discussed is my mother's rape, and which and it took me actually took me years to develop that, because I want to tell that story from the very beginning when I first started doing comedy 10 years ago. That's one of the stories I want to tell, because I like to tell stories that help people come to a place where they realize they're okay.
Yeah.
Because we all have foibles, and it makes it okay to talk about it. And one of the things that people don't like talking about is um, rape, especially when it's somebody who that
Yeah.
did it. So, and it took me years to work on that one. I mean, years and years. And then I was on a phone call and I accidentally came across the formula for it. And I was talking to a woman and she goes, "That is really great." And I said, "Great." And we finished the conversation. I didn't write it down and I lost it for 6 more months. I
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
couldn't.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible. Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of times most of the time when I do jokes, if I do them at a mic or whatever, because at mics, I'm like, well, who's going to care? I do them, and a lot of times there's just shocked silence in the entire area. And then there'll be like one person that dies laughing, and the rest of them are just like looking at each other like, is it okay for us to laugh or not? And like, yeah, it's okay to laugh. Um, so no, it's just my dark thoughts that I put out there.
So do you have comedy influences that either people that inspired you, or people that when you because what's well let's put it this way, what got to the point, what made you decide you want to take the stage and do comedy? Because apparently you used to produce, well, you did podcasting for
Right.
5 years before you started doing
Right.
comedy.
Mhm.
So what made you decide to take the leap from being behind the camera or behind the microphone and being up front on the stage, being the center of attention, and being a stand-up?
That was actually my son's idea. So my son lives in
Well,
a
well,
bigger
how old is
town.
your son? How old
My
was your
son's
son when you
At the
said that?
time he was 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so at the time he was 25, and he lives about an hour north of us in a town called Grand Rapids, which is the second largest city in Michigan, so just under Detroit, size-wise.
Right.
And he went to comedy a lot there in town, and he's always enjoyed comedy, so he was like, "Hey, dad, you should do stand-up." It's like, "We should do it together, or, we'll both do it." He's like, I was like, "Okay." I'm like, and I've always wanted to do it since I was, basically a kid, but I never had the courage to do it. And I wouldn't have
Mhm.
done it unless my son said we should do it. So that's why I did
Is your son still doing comedy?
it. Very rarely. He does it like
That's funny.
very,
He roped you
very
into
occasionally.
it. He roped
Yeah.
you into it, and
Yeah. I
now,
could probably count on my two hands the amount of times he's done it. But I do it, like 2 times a week or whatever, and he does it very rarely. But which is very upsetting for me because, and we're very different comedians.
hmm,
He's very just cute and likable and funny, and his on stage, he's really good. Like, it looks like he's been on stage forever, and he's just a really likable comedian,
right,
and he's so different from the way I am,
right.
and when I watch him, I'm like, "God, he's so good, I don't know why he doesn't just do it." But,
Now, is the comedy scene in Grand Rapids noticeably different than, let's say, Kalamazoo?
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's actually really you can do comedy every night in Grand Rapids. And there's a lot of just really super talented people there that have opened for like a lot of major comedians and a lot of my comedy friends, they do just shows constantly. So I like to go to Grand Rapids. That's where I prefer to go to do comedy.
Right.
It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And
So,
they got some big venues there too that are pretty nice.
so are there any comedians that influence you? That influence you, or not just comedians? Because actually, you can draw comedy influences from people outside of comedy. So, what were your influences is on your comedy style? What influenced your comedy style?
So I really like Maria Bamford, but I don't think anyone can do comedy like Maria Bamford because it's so like we watched her. We went to the Den Theater in Chicago and saw her,
Right.
and I can't tell you one joke she told.
Well, part also her comedy is really centered in the fact that her brain doesn't work like a normal brain.
Right.
She's
Exactly. Yeah.
yes,
But we were all dying laughing. I mean, we could not stop laughing. And somehow she started at one spot, went for like 40, it had to be like 45 minutes to almost an hour. And she ended up tying it all together at the end. And I
yeah,
cannot tell you one thing that she told us.
yeah.
But
She's very good. She's very funny, but she's also very disturbed. But she knows she's disturbed.
yeah, she knows she's disturbed when she'll talk about like, thoughts of wanting to put her parents in a meat grinder and stuff,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. So I love her. I mean, she's probably her and Anthony Jeselnik are my two favorite comedians. So
Okay.
those are my two favorites.
Um, Now I'm going to put like I said, the clip that we have for you is 7 minutes long, but the first one's about 3 minutes, 3 minutes or something, and we'll go through that real quick. Now, where was this? Do you remember?
I think Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
Your guess is as good as mine
That's
because
what I'm
I
gonna go
actually
with. I'm gonna go with
okay.
Mount Pleasant.
Okay, if anybody's watching this and you think it's not Mount Pleasant, please put your
Fuck
comments in.
off.
Yeah, fuck off.
Fuck
It's
off.
Mount
It's
Pleasant.
where we say
But
it was.
that's right. For the purpose of this show, it's Mount Pleasant. So fuck off.
Yeah.
So here we go.
All right, thanks everybody. It's so good to see everybody laughing, having a good time, and smiling. Where I come from, people don't seem to smile enough anymore. You guys notice that? Yeah, people aren't smiling enough. I'll give you an example. I was with a group of people not that long ago, and they decided that they wanted to do a group photo, but nobody was smiling. So I knew I had to say something. So I said, listen, I know we just buried my aunt. But that's no reason to ruin a good group photo. But I kind of knew as soon as I said it, I had made a mistake, and I knew that I had to smooth things over, so quickly, I apologized. I said, I'm sorry. That was a little bit insensitive of me. What I meant to say was, I know we just buried your mom. But that's still no reason to ruin a good group photo. Anybody here ever had a birthday? Yeah, birthdays. They're exciting when you're young. They get a little bit less exciting as you get older. I had a birthday recently. I turned 52. And I was starting to ask myself, I'm like, am I getting old? And then I woke up with pimples on my face. At 52. But it was like the universe wanted to send me this very important message. And that message was this. You are old, but Atney's a dick. I read this article recently. That's a lie, I read that article. And the headline was, adults are cutting ties with their parents. And I have to tell you, that actually filled me with this huge sense of relief. Because I thought that I was the only one that kept their parents tied up. It was International Women's Day recently. Yeah. And to celebrate, I gave my mom an extra hour in the yard. Unfortunately, she made a run for it. Don't worry, she came back, proving once again to my wife that a shock collar is a sound investment. Now, people have said to me, hey, dude, man, don't you think that there's another way? And there is. It's called below-the-knee amputation. But that is unnecessarily cruel. At least that's what my father screamed. Okay, I don't actually know what he screamed because I couldn't understand what he was saying. Chainsaws make a lot of noise. You know, they say if you love something, you should set it free. And if it comes back to you, it was meant to be. But if it doesn't come back to you, you should hunt it down and kill it. Now, these are my parents that I'm talking about. That's a bit extreme. I prefer just to release the hounds in case they make it past the minefields.
Yeah, it's funny because there was one, the insensitive part about I know we just buried my aunt. You know, that's a little insensitive, and I apologize. Your mom. I, I, I laughed out loud with that. But when you got to your parents running away, I kept revisioning watching Roots, and I kept thinking of the one scene where Kunta Kinte runs away and they cut off his foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and funny thing is, the whole time, the first time I watched this, because I've watched it 3 times. The first time I watched it, I could not get Roots out of my head. I really could, and I tried. I kept trying. Because I didn't. I said, "Son of a
Good, I
bitch."
guess.
Yeah, I said,
I mean,
"Son of a
good.
bitch." I said, "Son of a bitch," and I couldn't. Honestly, I was sitting there, and then even the whole thing, where, like you're talking about the amputation, and then that was even before you got to the amputation below the knee. And
Yeah.
then when you got to that, I was like, "Oh yeah, I really can't get Roots out of my head now."
I mean, I guess I'll take that as a compliment to me. 'Cause that makes me think of Roots.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Great miniseries.
So how long did it take you to work on that bit?
Um, so usually, I don't know, but we always this is one of the questions I usually ask comedians too is like, when do bits come to you?
Right.
Mine come to me just as I'm about to drift off to sleep.
Okay.
And so then I'm like, shit. So then I have to like quickly write a note on my phone, and then it will slowly just kind of go over and over and over in my head as time goes by. And I'm a big fan of like true crime.
All
So
right.
I just consume true crime a lot. I read about true crime, I read about profiling criminals, I watch a lot of documentaries. And so I'm always thinking about that stuff too, and all the horrible things that people have done. So usually that stuff will kind of drift into my head too. So I'm like, how can I make a situation funny where, people are holding somebody captive for years and years and years or whatever. So
Now, speaking of being held captive for years and years and years, you deal with a lot of comedians,
mhm.
and there is a connection. Um, but most comedians are in some way, shape, or form damaged.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so have you seen a comedian and they just after a couple of words out of their mouth, you recognize they're damaged because of all the things you've watched on true crime?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You hear it in their voice, and you go, "Oh my God, this
Yeah, there's
guy
something
was."
wrong with this one. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that a couple times where I'm like, that person's not right. But usually what happens is, when I meet people for the first time, I actually,
Hmm.
and I don't mean to do it, but usually what will pop in my head is what their most likely diagnosis is or what their most likely medical condition is. And
Right.
it will happen the same thing with like mental health. I'll be like, oh, this person has this, right when I first meet them and I'm talking with them for a little bit, that happens.
Oh, that's
So
right. Yeah.
yeah.
So with comedians, well, actually, not even with the comedians. Actually, comedians as well. Do they, when they find out what you do for a profession, do they try to get like free treatment advice from you?
No, a lot of people do. Usually the comedians don't, but a lot of people do. And it's
I guess
great.
comedians are used to people not caring.
Yeah, or they just don't go to the doctor anyway. They're like, "Ah, just go
Yeah,
to other
and
guy."
that's why I thought they would, because they're
No,
like,
they
they don't
don't.
go to the doctor, they don't have
No.
health care, so they're like, oh well, as long as
Yeah.
nurse practitioner, oh, could you look at this mole and tell me if it's
Yeah.
cancerous?
Usually I'm like, "No, I can't." Like, I don't need the liability, but thank you. So,
Oh, that's right,
yeah.
because so I used to play basketball, and in the league I played in, there was probably 5 or 6 doctors. And this one guy hurt himself on the court, and none of the doctors would touch him. Right, and we knew they were doctors. Now I because I played sports for a long time, I have my own medical bag that I bring with me to the gym.
Yeah.
You know, I can do stitches. I can do fix bones. I can put in stitches. I'm not a professional, so I don't have like liability, so to speak. You know, that kind
Right.
of thing. I don't have a code of ethics. I have a need to, you know. So, and I've done stitches 4 times.
Yeah.
Um, and without anesthesia, because usually the pain is so bad they don't care about the needle. When you know, if it's bad enough, they don't feel the needle. It's like it's still throbbing,
Yeah.
and it's just like you feel pressure but not the pain so much. Set bones, but this one guy, he was gushing blood, and the doctors were standing back and they were like pointing but they wouldn't.
You're like, hold pressure. Hold
Yeah,
some pressure
yeah.
there.
One of them says, and one of them literally just says, "Look, my insurance won't pay for this." He just came out and just admitted it. It was
Yeah.
like a liability thing. He goes, "I'm not going to
Yeah.
get sued."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that just reminded me. I think when you said that.
Yeah.
Now,
Here also I'll get texts in the middle of the night from people and I'm like, God, I'm not gonna give you any advice other than go get seen. So,
now, when you now, are you present for surgeries, or
Oh
are
no,
you?
I work strictly from home now. That's the only way I work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because some I know nursing is extremely broad field, and
Mhm.
so just because someone says they're a nurse practitioner doesn't mean we can like actually define what they're doing. I have a friend of mine who's a nurse, but they work almost exclusively in operating rooms,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and with this pretty much with the same surgeon, so they know what
Oh
they're
sure.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah. Like when I was a nurse, I was an ER nurse. So I was an emergency and trauma nurse. And then when I became a nurse practitioner, I just done family practice, internal medicine, urgent care. And now I just exclusively do telemedicine. That's it. I only do telemedicine.
now, when you were in emergency rooms, and were you doing that? Um, was there? Did you have to did you have to decompress before you go? Was there a ritual before you walked in there? And is that ritual similar to, or do you have a ritual for when you do comedy? Are those rituals similar?
No, I didn't because it just never really occurred to me. So, and I think that a lot of that goes with the whole I've only been like nervous getting on stage with comedy twice, and every other time I wasn't. And I think that's because part of it was my military training was not to panic, and then when I became a nurse, I worked with some really good before I became a nurse, I was a nurse aide in the
Right?
emergency room. I was a PCA. And I worked with really good trauma nurses, and they never panicked. They, like, never panicked. It didn't matter how bad shit was, they never panicked. So, I learned that from them also. I already had that good foundation, so I just never panicked when stuff was really bad. I just kept really cool and, tried to stay with things, and I think the same things with comedy where I have friends that do comedy, like, constantly that are, like,
Right?
semi-pro that I'm like, that will probably break, I think they'll be somebody that get nervous like crazy before they go do a set, and I'm always like, "Why are you so nervous? You're, like, awesome, and the crowd loves you and blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "I get nervous every time." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Really?" I'm like, "Something wrong with me."
Same here. I get
"Something must be
nervous.
wrong with me."
I get nervous every single time. Matter of fact, I am sweating bullets before I go up. I mean, I have a ritual,
Yeah.
and my ritual hasn't changed on purpose over the years, but it has changed under circumstances. Like I like to listen to music and sing real loud so I get used to hearing my voice. So I'll sing. Put a headphones, but I'll sing so I get used to hearing myself, hearing my voice, and emoting. Because that's half the battle is just finding out what's in here, and just getting it out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have to go up early, and I didn't have a chance to do that. You know,
Ah,
but even whether I do it or not, I'm still nervous. I'm always nervous up until I get my first laugh.
gotcha.
And once I get my first laugh, the nerves settle because it's like, oh yeah, you got this. You're fine. You're still funny. Yeah, I know that yesterday you were funny, but you could have lost it over the past 12 hours. So yeah, you're
Well,
still funny.
I never expect people to laugh, so I don't ever I'm like, if I use that as my metric, I'd be like, "God, I'm just gonna be nervous the whole freaking time." But yeah, one of my friends he's really good, and he said that. He's like, I get nervous every time. And I told him, I'm like, I don't. I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Like, pretty much, yeah. Is there something
Yeah, I
wrong?
was about to say
Yeah,
now.
there's something wrong with you if you don't get like. He's like, you don't get, and he's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. Now early on when I was doing it too, I would not remember any of it.
Right.
Like I would go up and do it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't remember any of that. I guess I did it. It was fine. I don't remember the experience at all. Now I remember it, but yeah, I probably just hit my head too many times.
Hi, I'm J.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist and host of Done Way Past Funny. You have just watched part 1 of our interview with comedian and show producer John Beavers. Please join us as we continue our interview, and when you come back to join us, bring a friend.